Now, Humboldt, as you can see here, was many things, yeah? A geographer, an explorer. He went on a scientific expedition. It was a 10 to 12-year scientific expedition in South America. And it was during this time that he collected a huge number of, a lot of data and a lot of, what are they called? Samples, thank you. A lot of samples. He came back with 60,000 samples from South America, and he spent the rest of his life working with these things. However, certain things that we take for granted today, like, plant geography. Yeah? That is, you understand that certain plants grow in certain regions and not in others. These are certain things that we take for granted today. But Humboldt was the one who established the discipline of plant geography by showing how organic life was linked to physical conditions. And he also laid the grounds for, he laid the foundation for meteorology, I can never pronounce this word, yeah, meteorology, by delineating isothermal lines as, in order to compare the different climatic conditions of various countries. Yeah? Again, this is something that we know today. He studied tropical storms in order to try and understand why Peru in South America was so dry, and he discovered that the reason for this was a current, an offshore current, and that current is known now as Humboldt's current. When he was a young man, he was befriended by George Forster or Georg Forster, who was also a traveler. Georg Forster had gone on Captain Cook's second circumnavigation of the globe, and Georg Forster befriended the young Alexander von Humboldt, and it was through him that Humboldt got this inspiration, and he was and became much more enthusiastic about traveling and going off to South America. Okay, these are some of the things that he did during his period in South America. As you can see, he attempted to climb the Chimborazo peak, which is the highest peak in South America, and established a record for those days by reaching a height of 5,000 and little meters. You have a picture of Humboldt and Aimé Bonpland, his scientific companion in South America. This is a sketch made by Humboldt about the geography of plants at the Chimborazo peak, showing how at different elevations, different plants also grow. This is the title of Humboldt's last work, which is called Cosmos. Now, Cosmos is, Humboldt calls it an attempt at a physical description of the world, and it was his aim in this work and in his life's work to unify various branches of scientific knowledge. And that is something because he firmly believed that no organism or no natural phenomenon can be studied in isolation. Everything is linked with everything else. And in this work, he establishes really dynamic linkages by talking about mythology, meteorology, history, astronomy, aesthetics, zoology, archaeology, climatology, etc. And it is for this reason that Humboldt is known actually as the last scientific generalist. He was writing at a time when the scientific disciplines were already becoming more and more specialized. And in this period, however, Humboldt stands out as the last scientific generalist, someone who firmly believed that that all aspects of science were interlinked and had to be studied together. In fact, if he were alive today, Humboldt would be a very strong supporter of the environment because he also believed in the close relationship between natural surroundings, between humankind and nature. So he would have strongly supported any ecological movements today. Now, after his death, many of his friends got together and set up a kind of a fund, a foundation in his name, in order to continue what had been his very generous support for young scientists. Alexander von Humboldt was known for supporting young scientists of his time, people who did not have much money. And his friends set up this foundation in his name after his death to continue with this kind of work. This money of the foundation was lost in the 1920s, and however, after the Second World War, in fact in 1953, the German federal government again gave money to set up or to revitalize the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. And therefore, the idea of the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation is to support young scientists. However, it is, without going into all the things, it is a research funding organization funded completely by the German federal government for postdoc studies. That means you have to have finished your PhD, and only then can you apply for it. Once you, I hope, of course, that in the future, some of you sitting here will be applying for a Humboldt fellowship. And there is the saying, once a Humboldtian, always a Humboldtian. As I said earlier also, once you have had the privilege of getting a Humboldt fellowship, then they look after you for life. And they keep allowing you to come back to Germany to do further research. If there is anyone who is interested in particular details about a Humboldt fellowship, you can ask me subsequently after this, and I can go into it, but I think for the rest of you, it is not so important. Mr. Mahendru has asked me to talk about PhDs. Yeah? How do they go about selecting PhDs? I think, however, that question has been answered to a great degree also earlier in the panel discussion, and yesterday when Dr. Fisher said that, you know, when you're doing an application for PhD, how should it look? You know, where he said a German professor has no time. Yeah? Somehow we in India managed to sort of jump along. We have a little more time, but German professors really have no time. So when you are sending a German professor your PhD application, you have to make very sure that it is you say what you want very clearly, and this applies also for a Humboldt fellowship. You say what you want very clearly, what you want to do. It has to be methodologically sound also. That means you have to know, for the humanities and social sciences, you have to know what your theoretical base is going to be, what you're going to research upon, and as he also mentioned yesterday, you have to know your timeline. That means you have to show that you are serious about your research, and you have to give the idea of your research as clearly, stated as clearly as possible. Don't waffle around. Don't write a whole lot of, you know, rubbish, which means nothing. Most of it cut and pasted from the internet. Don't do that. Write what you want to work on exactly. Now, for a Humboldt fellowship, at least I can say what the process of selection is. You can work on what you want with who you want. There are no restrictions at all at the postdoc level, and the selection committee comprises of experts from various fields, and they spend a long time going through the applications and to see whether this research is feasible or not, whether the person is of outstanding academic excellence, and whether that person needs to be supported. And I think this would apply to any funding organization, because after all, when you are going to give a fellowship, these are the things that you look for: academic excellence, feasibility of research, timeline, and I mean, these are the basic things that you're going to look at. Yeah? Is it possible to do this research in this period of time also? Yeah? So this is what you have to be very careful of when you are writing a research plan. Yeah? And when one thing also you must remember is don't write to any German professor's name you have got off the internet and say, I am interested in doing research with you.